Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Friday morning, the 15th of May. We are halfway the month. That's excuse me, 31 minutes are past the hour of 9 a.m. That we do come to you live. It's a bright and beautiful sunny day out here in Kampala, and we are here to get the conversation going. Last night, we were here and talked about a range of things, including Carlo Ancelotti's new contract at Brazil that will run until July 2030. We talked about Jose Mario Felix Mourinho and his impending sort of return to Real Madrid. We talked about that and among other things. So this morning we'll be having the conversation about Kylian Mbappe because apparently he was told he's fourth choice striker at Real Madrid. And then we'll also get to do the preview for the FA Cup final between Chelsea and Manchester City. But so that and among other things, of course, during the course of this podcast, that will be the hope. So I hope you guys are ready to join me for this conversation, depending on wherever it is that you will be emanating from in regards to your country, your respective destinations. So you'll allow me to have our audios tested just to make sure everything does check out. As far as things go, before we proceed with this morning's broadcast, welcome to yet another edition of Football Tribe UG. Okay, okay. There's something. I think our audios are good, but before we get into any conversation, I wish to send out my special shout outs to Mwami Isaac, CEO, Car Rental Uganda, Stephen Bukulu, my friend in Imbar at radio at Cruise FM. Thank you so much. Alex Aldinaitre, always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you so much for the continued love and support. Gladiator, aka Farouk, your love and support doesn't go unnoticed. Mitchell Wines Courts, thank you so much for always choosing to be part of the Football Tribe UG channel. Mildred Chelsea, aka Muchala Enzo Fernandez, Katende Mili, as you refer to yourself on the streets. Then Summer Banks, aka Sagittarius. Thank you so much, guys, for the continued love and support. I hope many of you continue to join us. People like Chipes, people like Reluctant Gamer, people like LFC, Pedri, Sino Bueno, and every single one of you, wherever it is that you are around the world. Thank you so much for the continued love and support. Team India, Ash, there's Ash and there's two Ashes. There's one who is a Barcelona fan, there's one who is a Tottenham fan. So all of you in your respective endeavors, I appreciate you a great deal. So keep doing what you do. Mr. Milton from London, thank you so much for the continued love and support for the Football Tribe UG channel. Breadcrumbs, thank you so much for the cup of coffee the other day. Jesus Y815, thank you so much. And every single one of you that joins us every single day, Monday to Saturday, for this morning broadcast, and of course in the night, that is Monday to Sunday for our evening broadcast. So for those of you that are just joining the broadcast, kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. Football Tribe UG is a community where the fans get to talk about what they support, for the fans, by the fans. That's when it comes to the conversation of football. That's our mantra. So for those of you whose names I may not have touched on individually, it doesn't mean your love and support goes unnoticed. So in the case of formalities, yesterday the Spanish La Liga continued for match day 36, and we did that one up, including Real Madrid being in action there. And yeah, they did win by 2-0 against Rio Oviedo. And one of the key special moments from that game was Santi Cazorla. When he came on in the second half, he did receive a standing ovation and applause from the Real Madrid fans in appreciation of the kind of career that he's had, particularly in the Spanish La Liga and beyond. He did help guide Rio Oviedo back to promotion, or sorry, to promotion in the Spanish La Liga last season, and he's been with them. It's not been easy, and the season has ended with them being relegated back to the Segunda Division. But I think he will be proud of himself, and those fans will be proud of him that at least he gave them the opportunity to get to this stage of the competition, at least thus far, and things like that. So really, really special. Anyways, so goals from Gonzalo Garcia with Brahim Diaz providing the assist. That was in the first half, in the 44th minute, and an 80-minute strike by Jude Bellingham did seal the deal as Real Madrid won that fixture to move to 80 points. Like I said, it's just a formality. The rest of if you're Real Madrid, if you're Villarreal, okay, maybe Villarreal and Atletico Madrid still have something to fight for in terms of the hierarchy of the table, because if Atletico Madrid win all their remaining games, really Villarreal are not winning, they could swap places at third and fourth. So you have that. And remember, 50th place is going to be a Champions League place for the Spanish La Liga, and that's because they have a team in a European final. That's Rayo Vallecano, and they went as far as the quarterfinals. They had three teams there. They had Barcelona, they had Real Madrid, they had Atletico de Madrid, who then went to the semi-finals and got crushed out. So they have an extra spot. It's not just three places. So you'll expect to see Manuel Pellegrini and his Real Betis side in the UEFA Champions League next season. So that's Barcelona, Real Madrid, Villarreal, Atletico de Madrid, and Real Betis. And then Celta Vigo and Getafe could be the teams that qualify to play in the UEFA Europa League as well as the UEFA Conference League, respectively, because for now they occupy 6th and 7th place, respectively. Real Sociedad are in 8th place with 3 points adrift of a 7th place Getafe. Now, of course, they still have 2 games left to play, and that will be significant in that case, or that will be the significance of that story. Then also, the other was, of course, Girona and Real Sociedad settling for a 1-1 draw, as did Valencia against Rayo Vallecano in the other fixtures played on the night. Like I said, now, the biggest task or challenge in the Spanish La Liga is everything to do with relegation. That relegation zone is as chaotic. With 2 games left to play, you have teams from 10th place to as low as 19th place still fighting against relegation. Whoever wins that game is the one that will survive. Basically, that's what it is, because in 10th place in 11th place is Valencia with 43 points, and 19th place team is Levante with 39 points. So when you do the math there, it's just a 4 points difference with 2 games left to play, and that means there's 6 points left to play for. So with that said, clearly you can see that it's been quite a battle. I think I've never seen this kind of thing before, by the way, for as long as I've watched football, that the battle against relegation is that close among so many teams. But what it also tells you is the disparity that there exists between the top brass in Barcelona and Real Madrid. I mean, Barcelona have 91 points. At 91 points, that's 41 points more than a 6th place team. Tell me how that is possible. 41 points. And those 41 points on the same table would put you at least in 15th place on the La Liga table. So that's the stark difference when it comes to these teams and the competition. So this relegation battle that appears to be close tells you the poor quality of the mid-table teams. I mean, tell me why. Because ordinarily, it's okay to have 5 teams involved in the relegation battle, anywhere from 15th and below. That's normal. But I mean, even the 10th team, actually even 9th, because 9th, basically, you're not yet safe. Only goal difference serves you. And by the way, all teams from seventh place and below have a negative goal difference. From seventh place and below have a negative goal difference. Now, I do not want to draw it to any, I don't want to draw any comparisons, but I find that really, really odd. Whereas when you go to the Premier League, you'll find from 11th place and below are the teams with a negative goal difference. And this time, the side, you have a team as high as 7th, and that is Getafe. They have a -6. So this season, by the champions Barcelona and the trailing Real Madrid, all the other teams will need to look themselves in the mirror and say, where might have we done things better than we did? Because even Atletico de Madrid, they've stumbled. This is not the kind of season that I'd expected or I'd hoped for them to have. And yet, it is what they're having. So you have that anyways. Moving on, because we cannot dwell on the shenanigans of the Spanish La Liga. I wanted to bring you in the know of some quotes, as you know, revealed by Kylian Mbappe in the aftermath of that game. He did say he spoke about. He said, "Alvaro." No, sorry. This is what Kylian Mbappe had to say. Forgive me as I fetch the exact quote, as highlighted by the one and only. Now, Kylian Mbappe seemed to suggest that Alvaro Arbeloa told him he is the fourth striker behind Vinicius Jr., Gonzalo, and Franco Mastantuano. Now, first of all, Franco Mastantuano plays on the right wing. Vinicius plays on the left. Gonzalo Garcia, yeah, he's a striker, forward. I understand. But none of those players have the qualities of Kylian Mbappe. And Mbappe says, Alberto told me I'm the fourth striker behind those three. Now, Alvaro Arbeloa came out to say he did not say that. He said, it never happened that I told Mbappe he's our fourth striker. Maybe he misunderstood. I never said it. Now, to have a player come out and allegedly misquote his head coach, and then the head coach is rebuttaling that to say, you misquoted me, is very typical of the environment that has been exhibited in that dressing room. Of course, Kylian Mbappe had other things to say. He spoke in praise of Florentino Perez as being the best president in the world. We are lucky to have him, and we should never forget what he's done for Real Madrid, and that kind of thing, And then he said, I do not watch Arbeloa's conferences at home. I have French TV, not Spanish TV. So, I mean, was that necessary to say that you do not watch your manager's press conferences? There's just something, I don't know, intentionally odd about this Real Madrid dressing room. So what if you do not watch the manager's press conferences? Need you have to say it? Just say, usually by the time of his press conferences, I'm doing training. Maybe I'm in the gym, I'm doing personal drills, or we are training at the club. Find an excuse, you know? And let me tell you why. I've watched these players in multiple post-match interviews, and rarely do you find a player that leads you to think that they are not smart. So they are smart, or at least well-trained and well-drilled when it comes to what they say to the press. But every once in a while, somebody is going to say something very stupid. Every once in a while, somebody is going to say something very, very stupid, you know? So, and as unfortunate as that may sound, in this particular case for Real Madrid, for Kylian Mbappe to be saying those things, I do not think it was warranted, you know? So, and then he talked about uh, some people saying he doesn't want to play, and he said it's contrary to that. It's because he struggled with injuries and stuff like that, um, especially in the second part of the season. Let me tell you, a player like Kylian Mbappe, who knows his significance with the French national team and the idea of playing at the World Cup, knowing that there's nothing left to salvage about Real Madrid this season, he's not going to be desperate to be on that pitch. He would rather reserve himself for the World Cup because then he's going to have a higher chance of winning the World Cup than Real Madrid would have had a chance to win a trophy this season, especially at some point, you know. So once you find yourself in that sort of space, you ought to protect yourself because why risk it for a team that is not going to win anyway? I mean, they had, because by the time they played the El Clasico, they had considered the Spanish La Liga title already. And Alvaro Arbeloa, when he was being asked why he didn't start, and he said, "How do I start a player that never traveled just a few days ago? You know, he's bound to come off the bench. And in 3 days' time, we have another game, so he will play." And that's true. That's true. They have another game, he'll get his chance to play. But anyways, for Real Madrid, at least there's only 2 games left to play, and the season will climax, and then they will all move on. We'll go to the summer. Those going for the World Cup will go with their respective squads. Dani Ceballos, Eduardo Camavinga, and so many others will be chilling in the sunset for the summer on the beaches, enjoying their hard-earned money throughout the course of the season. I suspect that the USA is going to get a lot of vacationists because if you're a celebrity, if you're a footballer and you're thinking, oh, it's summertime, I need to go off, you're going to go and enjoy the beaches of Miami and all that. Maybe you're going to go to Hawaii because why? It's in proximity to World Cup games. You'll say, I go that beach, I'll take a flight out, go to this place, watch the game of football of my country and etc, and then retreat back. So, and continue enjoying my summer for the next 1 month or so. So anyways, that's about it with Kylian Mbappe. Now, allow me to move on into what's to come in the weekend because the weekend does start tonight. It does start tonight because Aston Villa have a game against Liverpool. That's the fixture for this week. So do not miss out on any of that. So tonight, that's in the Premier League. They'll be up against Liverpool. So make sure you do not miss out on that game. Oh, really? Come on. Okay. Yes. So the Premier League does return tonight with one fixture between Liverpool and Aston Villa. That's at 10 p.m. But before we get to that, we have a very, very gargantuan fixture this weekend because the order in which you have those games is Liverpool are playing on a Friday, then Saturday you have the FA Cup final, and you don't have any Premier League games, and then they will come on Sunday. So for the first time in as long as I can remember, you'll have an early kickoff on Super Sunday that kicks off at 2:30 p.m. But so which one should we start with? I think let's start with the FA Cup final between Chelsea and Manchester City. Beautiful game of football. Match we do expect at least to be played. Manchester City playing in their 4th consecutive FA Cup final. They've only won one of their last 3 finals, beating against Manchester United in 2023 by 2-1 before losing to the same opponent at the subsequent year. And then last year they lost to Crystal Palace by 1-0. Then you have the Chelsea side who prior to Manchester City achieving that this milestone of four consecutive finals, had equally played 3 consecutive FA Cup finals between 2020 and 2022, and they did not win any of those. 2020, they lost to Arsenal by 2-1. You remember, Christian Pulisic scored for Chelsea, and a brace from Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was enough to salvage it all. Then the subsequent year, 2021, they lost to Leicester City. You remember that beautiful goal by Yuri Tillemans. And then the subsequent year, 2022, they lost out to Liverpool 6-5 on penalties. Chelsea do not have a lot of luck riding for them when it comes to domestic cup finals, but they're a team that you cannot rule out in as far as finals are concerned. When you drift further back, you'll find that their last victory in the FA Cup final or in the FA Cup came in 2018 when they beat up against Manchester United by 1-0. But prior to that, they had again lost to Arsenal by 2-1 in 2017. So basically, or essentially, Chelsea have no trouble getting to the final, but their challenge is getting over the final, winning the final. They have 7 FA Cups. They have 8 compared to Manchester City's 7. This is the oldest cup competition in English football. It's really, really highly respected or revved about. That's why the Premier League or in the FA lobbied to have the FA Cup winner being an Europa League place. So you win the FA Cup, you go to Europa League at the very least. Now, speaking of the UEFA Europa League, did you know that in Chelsea, winning this cup final will be their biggest opportunity to play a game, to play European football next season? Hi, Rio Dandy. Good to have you back on the broadcast, sir. So, now, a final is obviously very critical or very important to both teams because it's an opportunity to get a piece of silverware. And I've said this about Manchester City as many times as I can remember. Manchester City set their bar so high that anything that looks as substandard to what they set for themselves feels like a poor season. And yet, we come to this stage of the season, and Manchester City are already champions of the Carabao Cup. They beat Arsenal by 2-0. They are finalists in the FA Cup. They are still in the race for the Premier League title. In other words, if Arsenal were to sleep in the Premier League, and if they can beat up against Chelsea tomorrow, then what we could be looking at is Manchester City winning the domestic treble at a time when we all think they've not had a wonderful season. Meanwhile, there's been a short, 5-6 seconds video clip that has been making the rounds, apparently shot from within the Etihad Stadium. They had put the trophies at around the center line, and it appeared that shooting some form of video. Now, early callers who Grapevine had it that, they're trying to shoot a video for Pep Guardiola's farewell, and they had to showcase all the titles this is one. Now, contrary to that, at least according to Ben Jacobs over Give Me Sport and TalkSport, he does say that they are shooting a farewell video for Bernardo Silva, who is going to be leaving the club after a period of 9 years. Remember, he joined them from AC Monaco in 2017 for about 50 million euros. So, excuse me. So, essentially, it doesn't mean that a possible departure of Pep Guardiola is ruled out. But for now, that's not what we're getting from credible sources. That Pep Guardiola anxiety we'll find out at the end of the season, I think. I think Manchester City, but again, you get mixed signals out of the Etihad Stadium. Why? Because the Manchester City minders are preparing themselves for his eventual exit. That's why they've already identified who they believe would be an ideal replacement in Enzo Maresca. But then, that decision also entirely depends on Pep Guardiola on whether he wants to continue or not. So should it be in his best interest that he sees fit to continue, then Enzo Maresca will continue to be on the sidelines. I've said this without any fear of contradiction whatsoever, as a matter of prediction, that if Pep Guardiola were to win the domestic treble, he would step down. He would say, yeah, I've done it all. I sign out on a high, because that would be signing out on a high. But if he only ends up with the Carabao Cup, the ego in him could persuade him into staying, to say, I need to prove these guys wrong in my final year, or in the final year of my contract, which is next season, 2026, 2027. So there's that. And all this is the context that you have to put around to it, you know. So the FA Cup final is that's an important game. First of all, you go back to that game on Wednesday night between Manchester City and Crystal Palace. We saw how Manchester City rested 6 of their starters. I think Nico O'Reilly, Ryan Chucky, Jeremy Doku, Brad Erling Haaland. Who else? Of course, in that midfield, they started with Phil Foden alongside Bernardo Silva. Now, I don't think I can pass Nico Gonzalez or Tijani Reinders for regular starters, not really. But at least you could see that there was Pep Guardiola intentionally rotated his team for the benefit of this upcoming final in the FA Cup. You know, he wants those players to be more fresh, because going into the final, the one thing I can suspect or predict is that you'll see James Trafford in goal. You'll see, I think McGay is not cap-tied. You'll see a McGay alongside Kushanov. Maybe Nico O'Reilly gets to return to the starting 11 at left back. Then you would have Matheus Nunes. You'll get your midfield of Nico Gonzalez. That's if Rodrigo Hernandez Cascante is not ready for return, alongside Bernardo Silva, ahead of them being Ryan Cherki, Jeremy Doku, Antoine Semenyo, and Brad Erling Haaland leading the lines. That is what I would suspect for Pep Guardiola going into that sort of final. Now, on the other side, Chelsea, we know that they are a struggling team in terms of results, in terms of what's not gone right for them. We're talking about a team who have only one win in, I don't know how many games, in more than 10 games. And that one win came at the expense of Leeds United by 0-0 in the semi-finals of the FA Cup at Wembley. That got scored by Enzo Fernandez. But you go back to the Premier League and they lost 6 games in a row before drawing away to Liverpool in a 1-1 draw. Enzo Fernandez again scoring there to cancel out Ryan Gravenberch's brilliant goal that had given Liverpool the lead. Then to find another victory, particularly in the Premier League, I think you have to take yourself as far back as that victory against Aston Villa, you know, and then subsequent to that, everything seemed to be a Ngugi Wathiongo written script of things fall apart, you know, things fell apart, which in the end culminated into the sacking of Liam Rosenior. So we're talking about a very unstable team in Chelsea in terms of what they've had to go through this season. You part ways with Enzo Maresca. Liam Rosenior comes in, less than 4 months, it's not worked out, and Carl McPherson is the man in the dugout, or will be the man in the dugout for the final. On the other side, Manchester City enjoy all levels of stability, all sorts of levels of stability. Why? Because it's a very, very neat circle. It's a very, very neat circle of players that have been together for quite some time. Of course, there are some new buttons in there, the likes of Antoine Semenyo, Mark Gui, and that kind of thing. But overall, you have a feeling, or you have an appreciation in the longevity of Pep Guardiola in understanding that team much better than maybe a Carl McPherson would understand his Chelsea side. But yeah, a final is a final. I cannot rule anything out. We're talking about a Carl McPherson whose first game as an interim following the departure of Enzo Maresca before Liam Rossinha was appointed, was to take a charge of that Chelsea team away to the Etihad Stadium, where he managed to pick up a point following a 1-all draw. So you ought to give him some credit. Now, he just came out of the weekend where he battled it out with Liverpool in a 1-all draw. So what makes you think that he cannot come out and battle it against Manchester City in the final? Excuse me. The rate at which I'm yawning needs to be investigated. Yesterday's, for last night's broadcast, somebody said I looked exhausted. Anyways, so if you're Carl McPherson, what team are you fielding? If Robert Sanchez has returned, he will be my first choice. But nonetheless, in his absence, it will be Felipe Yankson. I'd go with Richie James at right back for as long as he's fit. Marco Correa at left back. I'd go with Levi Colwill and Wesley Fofana in that back line. I'd look to deploy Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez. I'd look to deploy Moises Caicedo, Andre Santos, and Enzo Fernandez as our 10. Cole Palmer will have to drift off coming in from the right wing and inverting inwards. And then on the other side, of course, Pedro Neto with Joao Pedro leading the lines. The reason as why I'm going for that kind of team is that, first of all, you'll have Kukorea overlapping depending on how the game is going. You can have Richie James inverting into midfield, and you push Andre Santos a bit forward to create that midfield trio of Richie James and Moises Caicedo. But also that what means that you've left yourself exposed this side, so you need to be concerned about that so that Jeremy Doku does not have a free pass. Anyways, and then the objective is to create overloads in midfield and in the final third to try and frustrate Manchester City, because when you create those overloads, they can help you create spaces. But also, when you lose the possession, you can have the chance to win the ball back high up the pitch. So it's based on that analogy that I would makes that sort of starting 11. I feel that if you were to play Moises Caicedo and Romeo Lavio, that feels a little bit too conservative. If you are leading by 2-0, let's say by the 70th minute, then I would understand him coming on for an Andre Santos or anybody else, for that matter. Now, I think this yawning thing doesn't want me to work. Anyways, so we should expect a very entertaining game. Entertaining, but also very close in terms of being contested, and regardless of the current status or the recent status of Chelsea in terms of their form or otherwise. Manchester City's form has been okay. It's been in tremendous fashion. We're talking about a team that has won the last 2 games without conceding a single goal, really scoring 3 in each of them. You go back then, the one against Burnley, and that kind of thing. So they really in a good space. Anyways, so Manchester City versus Chelsea, that's the gist of it. Jeremy Doku is the kind of guy who is recently in good form, so Chelsea will need to keep a very keen track of him. And therefore, speaking of that, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a back 3 again from Carl McPherson. And when you see a back 3 and wing backs, that means he wants to have numbers when they drift and they're being attacked. So, or at least in part, or that will be the case. So anything can happen. I do not know where this one will slice, but the one thing I'm more confident about is that Manchester City are the team to beat in this particular one. They are the team to beat. They are the team to beat. They are the favorites to win it. But like I said, a final is a final. Anything can happen with Chelsea. Sometimes finals are defined by moments. One key moment of the game and bang, you get that one goal that ordinarily would push you through. Quinton says, we got the cupcakes ready today. Hi, Quinton. Good to have you on the broadcast. So nice for you to have the cupcakes. So That game between Chelsea and Manchester City will kick off at 5 p.m. exactly East African time at Wembley Stadium. So be sure not to miss out on anything in that regard or respect. Yeah, it's going to be, I suspect it will be a good game. Very, very good game to watch. I suspect it will be close. It won't have a gas galore, of course. It could be 2-1 in favor of Manchester City. It could be 1-0, and not too far back, Manchester City just beat Chelsea by 3-0 at the Stamford Bridge. The one question I'm going to be asking Chelsea fans in some forums today is whether they will once again be supporting Manchester City to win this, because that's what they did when they were playing against them at Stamford Bridge. They wanted their team to lose because it meant that would dent Arsenal's title hopes, as their London rivals. And I said, how do you even, want that to happen? You say, I live where they're having the championship in New England, America. I've been there for the Patriots games which is the NFL. Okay. So let me ask, Quinton, between the NFL and rugby, which sport came first? Which sport existed first? Because for me, I always look at NFL or American football as quite being very similar to rugby. The two being very similar. Anyway, so in terms of my prediction, I'll go Manchester City to win 2-1, but I won't be surprised by anything Chelsea does to win that game. Like I said, it's a final, it can be close. Okay, let's move on to the Premiership, where Aston Villa take on Liverpool tonight. But like I said, there's no fixtures on Saturday because of the FA Cup final, and therefore you have to wait until Sunday at 2:30 p.m. when Manchester City entertain Nottingham Forest. Then Brentford will take on Crystal Palace, Everton will take on Sunderland, Leeds and Brighton will face off with each other. Wolverhampton Wanderers will be up against Fulham, and Newcastle will take on West Ham United at 7:30 p.m. You say I love American football like you love soccer. I completely understand, 100%. From my side of the aisle, I think in terms of Uganda, I think people love the NBA more than they do the NFL. I don't speak for everyone, so I won't want to assume that there are no NFL fans in Uganda. But overall, it's not the sort of sport that people follow. But I also understand for your part, because the same way I have my Indian community on this channel who loves their cricket more than anything in the world, You like the NBA too? What club of the NBA do you support? Oklahoma City Thunders, the LA Lakers, Golden State Warriors, what? Boston Celtics, or the Houston Nuggets? Boston Celtics. Okay. Boston Celtics. Ain't that where Kevin Durant played? Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, like I've said before, the NBA is one of those, and basketball in general, is one of those games that I do appreciate. You say you live in New England. Okay. It's one of those games that are sports that I really love, but I never get the chance to watch it. And that's an access thing. But also the timing of kickoff. I mean, those games kick off at 3 a.m., 2 a.m. At that time, I'm thinking I need to go put my head down and so that I can wake up in time for the following day. Okay, you say Boston, America. So Then, after all that action on Sunday, Arsenal fans will have to wait until Monday when they take on Burnley. And then after that, after Monday, we'll have two more fixtures on Tuesday between FC Bournemouth at home at the Vitality Stadium against Manchester City, and a fixture between Chelsea and Tottenham Hotspurs. So, in a nutshell, this for all these games, it's a must-win for Arsenal, it's a must-win for Man City, must-win for Tottenham Hotspurs, given the context of the relegation, because if, let's say, West Ham were to beat up against Newcastle on Sunday, trust me, they would be, they'll be moving a point above. They will be moving a point above Tottenham Hotspurs in as far as the rest is concerned, in as far as the rest is concerned. Anyways, okay. So now, Aston Villa versus Liverpool. Do both teams have anything left to play for? Quinton says, I've been to where they are playing $30,000 for, they've been paying $30,000 for a ticket for FIFA World Cup Championship. I'll never pay that to see. Jesus Christ, $30,000. You give me $30,000 and I'm whole. I mean, that's the equivalent of approximately 100 million in UJX. People buy me cups of coffee at as low as $1 on this channel, and I'm appreciative tremendously of that. But because it's not a world of equals, I mean, $30,000 for one game, that's just staggering. But anyways, maybe I'm not playing. Anyways, I'll leave that at that. But I remember when there's a certain deal sheet that came out regarding ticket prices for the World Cup. And right from the onset, I did critique it. I said, no, this is just exaggeration. When I looked at some of those ticket prices, I was left bemused. Yeah, buy a car over here just for a seat at a soccer game. It's crazy. Imagine paying $30,000 to watch a game and the team you support doesn't even win. Unfortunate. Anyways, for those of you that, would love to support the channel, you can subscribe for a membership. It's only about $2.5. They're about 10,000 Uganda shillings. So that's if you wish to support the channel. That's one of the ways you can support Football Tribe UG, or you can do it through the super chat and say, I'm buying you a cup of coffee. Anyways, Liverpool against Aston Villa. Both teams tied at 59 points. With FC Bournemouth lacking in behind them at 55 points. Khalid says, hi Khalid, good to have you back on the podcast. Now, in an ideal world, the problem is that this is not yet determined. First and foremost, this is the final game that Aston Villa are going to play before playing the finals of the UEFA Europa League. Remember, those finals are next week on Wednesday, May the 20th, at the Besiktas Park in Istanbul, Turkey, or Turkey. Now, so first of all, Aston Villa are not yet at risk of losing their 5th place, but they could lose it. With 2 games left to play, there are 2 games left to play against Liverpool, against Manchester City on the final day of the season. Now, they have a third very, very important game, and that's the game against Freiburg in the finals of the UEFA Europa League. Imagine if you're Aston Villa and you lose to Freiburg in the final. But prior to that, you lose to Liverpool. And then on the final day of the season, you're losing to Manchester City because they are trying to chase down the Premier League title. Imagine that. As you imagine that, it also implies that if Bournemouth keep winning, if they win their remaining 2 games, they could land at 61 points. That will be 2 points above Aston Villa. IDK, good to have you back on the broadcast. So, Aston Villa are caught between a rock and a hard place. But maybe their slight advantage is that AFC Bournemouth's next game equally is against Manchester City. So the question for Aston Villa is, do you bet to lose? Do you rest your players and lose the game against Liverpool and hope that Manchester City will beat AFC Bournemouth? Therefore, they will not threaten to leapfrog you by the final day of the season? I do not know. Remember, we said this scenario. FC Bournemouth can still play UEFA Champions League football under these conditions. For example, if Aston Villa were to finish 5th on the Premier League log, really they win the UEFA Europa League, because the winner of the UEFA Europa League automatically qualifies for the Champions League. But because even on the terms of the Premier League table, he would have finished in a Champions League place, then they would have to relinquish that spot to the next best team, which will be the team in 6th place. That's why Chelsea fans have been hoping against hope that maybe they find back their winning mojo and finish about 6th. You know, you say, what are your predictions for Manchester City against Bournemouth? I think it could easily end in a draw. That's a huge possibility, ADK. But because that game is next week on Tuesday, I didn't want to get ahead of myself. I need to see how Manchester City behave in the FA Cup final on Saturday against Chelsea. So if you don't mind, give me your prediction for Chelsea versus Manchester City in the FA Cup final. You know? So, for Liverpool, if they win, they sort of guarantee their space in the top 4. It's not yet guaranteed, by the way. It's not yet guaranteed. Because, for example, if Liverpool were to lose 2 of their remaining games and Brighton win all their remaining games, Brighton could go above Liverpool. So Liverpool still need that 1 win to sort of seal this fatal battle. IDK says, I think Manchester City will beat Chelsea by 3-1. I do not remember the last time we had a high-scoring final to that extent, because you have to go back to 2019 when Man City beat Watford by 6-0 for a high-scoring final. And then you go back to 2015 when Arsenal put 4 past Aston Villa. And then the year prior to that, when Arsenal beat Hull City by 3-2. So ordinarily, the FA Cup final is not a very high-scoring fixture. Usually it's 2-1, 1-0, that kind of score. Because even that one of 2022 between Liverpool and Chelsea ended goalless before the post-match penalties, for which Man City won 6-5. So, but I do respect your prediction for what it is. Thank you so much for that. So, I do not know, and I'm here thinking hard. If you're Unai Emery, what kind of team do you field here? Do you test the team that you think is going to play in the final? Because the beauty for them is that they're going to play on a Friday, so they'll have Saturday, Sunday off, I suspect. Then they'll have Monday and Tuesday to prepare for the final on Wednesday. And a little bit of traveling to Istanbul. But here's what you could expect from this Aston Villa starting 11. Emiliano Martinez, Matti Cash and Ian Madsen. That means Lucas Digne gets rested. Ezri Konsa and Tyrone Mings. I don't know what's happened to Pau Torres, but they have some injuries, or maybe he could be rested. Boubacar Kamara, Edward, and Amadou Onana are the players that are currently injured. On the side of Liverpool, they have a huge chunk of those, a huge pile of that. Then the midfield, we could see what he did against Nottingham Forest when he played the back three, and then he had one of the centre backs come into midfield, and that was Victor Lindelof. So if you see a Victor Lindelof in midfield alongside the Ross Barkley, Yuri Tillemans, John McGinn, Morgan Rogers, and Ollie Watkins, do not be surprised. Excuse me. So the gist of it here is, if you're him, you rest players in anticipation of that final, or do you play them to keep their momentum, to keep them more fresh, to keep their game rhythm, or it's too big a risk to carry? I think it's too big a risk to carry. Why risk some of your most prized assets ahead of a cup final that could win you a piece of silverware? Remember, he's not won a piece of silverware ever since he joined Aston Villa. So doing it this season would be tremendous, and doing it through the UEFA Europa League could be really, really tremendous. On the side of Liverpool, Georgi Mamadashvili in goal, Ibrahim Konate. Now, Liverpool have some injuries with Giovanni Leoni, Wataru Endo, Conor Bradley, Arson Ramsey-Baker, Fran Vitz, and Hugo Ekitike. So I'd go Virgil van Dijk. I'd go Joe Gomez at right back, Ibrahim Konate as Van Dijk is centre back pairing, Milos Kakes, Gravenberch alongside Soboslai. I'd go Fran Vitz. Fran Vitz as a knock. So, okay, McAllister, Gravenberch. Then Dominic Soboslai, Riongo Moha, Mo Salah ahead of Jeremy Frimpong and Cody Gakpo. That will be my team for Liverpool. My prediction is going to be, let's see, Liverpool are playing away from home. Not an easy fixture, but they should be able to find a way to win this one. Could we see another draw? Because Liverpool's last two visits to Villa Park have ended in draws. A 2-2 draw and a 3-3 draw. Can we expect a high-scoring 2-2 draw between the two sides? But I feel the odds are a bit tilted in Liverpool's favor because of the responsibilities that lay on the shoulders of Aston Villa going into that game in the finals against Freiburg. So, although not entirely, I expect an Aston Villa B team. And that's where Liverpool could gain the advantage. So I'm going to go for Liverpool to win by 2-1. I'm going for a Liverpool win. Yeah, in that one. Liverpool to win by 2-1. Yeah, that's my gut feeling. Anyways, so that's what will be coming in the Premier League your way. But that's for as far as Friday night is concerned. Then on Saturday, more action. The other action will be predominantly in the German Bundesliga. I think that one climaxes this weekend. Yeah, the German Bundesliga is set to climax this weekend. Bayern Munich already champions. And yeah, all games will kick off at 4:30 p.m. On Saturday in the German Bundesliga. Bayer Leverkusen against Hamburg, Bayern Munich against Cologne, Borussia Mönchengladbach against Hoffenheim, Eintracht Frankfurt against VfB Stuttgart, Heidenheim against Mainz, Freiburg at home against RB Leipzig, St. Pauli against Wolfsburg, Union Berlin against Augsburg, and then Werder Bremen against Borussia Dortmund. So those are the fixtures that will see out the German Bundesliga for this campaign. Then in the Spanish La Liga, they will not play, I think, until Sunday, maybe. But yeah, that's what you should be expecting from that world. Okay. Oh, sorry. There's something I forgot to bring to you now. So, guys, forget not to go to the channel under the video section to watch our videos. One about Manchester United and Michael Carrick. Another is about Xabi Alonso, why I think he's the better candidate for the Chelsea job. That and among other things, So go and watch that in plenty full. Meanwhile, I've seen multiple reports suggesting that Arsenal are tracking West Ham midfielder Mateus Fernandes. Yeah, Mateus Fernandes is being tracked by Arsenal. He's such a very decent midfielder. And this comes just a few days after it was reported that Manchester United, that he was also on the radar of Manchester United. Now, all of those guys are banking on the idea that, or are banking on the basis that West Ham will get relegated, and therefore that will keep his transfer fee or cost within touching distance or within reach. Because if West Ham were to stay in the Premier League and you want to go and purchase him for a player that only joined them last summer, he may cost you quite a fortune. He may cost you quite a fortune. So there's all that to think about. Oh. Anyways, so then also Manchester United will remain in pursuit of Elliot Anderson. Like I've constantly said, they're not the only ones in the race for him. Manchester City are really, really interested. And it's the kind of deal that you would rather do before the World Cup than waiting for the World Cup to finish. Because for some of these players, he could go to the World Cup, put up an even better performance, and before you know it, the price tag is hiking. And then Bernardo Silva said he wants to determine his next club before the World Cup. Remember, he's going to be leaving Manchester City at the end of the season. So in living at Manchester City, he needs to find a destination. I don't know. He's going to have offers from all over the place. For such a long time, Barcelona were interested in his services. I don't know if they still are, but in Portugal, he wouldn't struggle to get an elite club. Sporting, FC Porto, Benfica, he would fit just right in. I feel he can still cut it at the top level. So Italian Serie A like KDB would still be, an option. Hi, good to have you on the podcast. Whatever your name is, it's in a language that I cannot read, Meanwhile, Bruno Fernandes says Declan Rice was supposed to be a Manchester United player. He said he was talking to an outlet, and he said, I've always said Rice was a player to play for Manchester United. I was really sad when he chose to go to Arsenal. I always thought he would be a perfect fit for our club. Now, dear Bruno Fernandes, you cannot get a player that you're not even in contention for, because Manchester United never set out to sign Declan Rice. It was Arsenal and Manchester City that were pursuing for his signature, and they got that. Manchester City pushed it for it, Arsenal pushed it over the limits, and they landed their money. That's why I really, really hope that for the hard work that is put in over the last 3 years, finally counts for something. But it's not just about Declan Rice. it's about the entirety of that team. Because if they were to win today, that win would be for as good as a Kylian Tierney somewhere. It would be as good as for any player that has been part of Arsenal's project for the last during the course of the last 6 years under Mikel Arteta. All players that have gone through that, But of course, it would be more to some than it would mean to others. Starboy, Martin Odegaard. I mean, I wouldn't want to see their hearts broken because I know what it means to come so close and still not win. Anyways, guys, IDK, thank you. Quinton, thank you so much. Oh, come on. Rio Dandy, thank you so much for having chipped in for this morning's podcast. Guys, allow me to wrap it up here and call it a day, and I rest off to other matters. It's been a pleasure doing this with all of you. Let's do this again tonight at 9 p.m. East African time, and we'll be focusing our submissions on what's more to come during the course of the weekend, the responsibilities of other teams, etc., etc. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.